Good morning, fish keepers. Cam here from thefishroom.co.nz. We've done it again. We've made it to a Friday. Congratulations. Celebrate with coffee. Well done, Tim. It's good coffee. Still need to try my beard. Okay, just a very quick bit of admin before we jump on to our special guest. Just reminding everybody that we have moved. We're now 8B to a place in Stoke. Literally moved from next door to where we were. We're now operating completely out of 8B, not 10B. So we've got some signage up. It's a big black building. So come on down if you're in Nelson and come check it out. All right, that is literally all the admin that I have. So I'd like to bring on our guests. We've got John as normal, and we've got Chris Englezou from Sea Fish Essentials. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No worries. So first thing I like to ask people is, how do you get involved in fish and aquariums, and how long have you been involved in doing it, and that type of, just a wee background on who you are and what you've done and where you've been.
Well, I have quite my introduction to fish keeping was an interesting one because it came from two angles really. One of my older brothers used to keep an aquarium. We lived separately, but when we used to visit him, he would have an aquarium with various different types of tropical fish, African cichlids. Another month I would go there, would have piranhas and all these different types of fish. That was really exciting for me. I was always a nature lover from very young. And I think that was probably my earliest introduction to aquariums and sort of the thing that made me want to keep fish. But the opportunity arose when I won a prize at a fun fair. And the prize was actually a goldfish in a bag. I don't know if you guys have this in New Zealand, but over here we used to have fun fairs where you would win a prize and you'd have all these bags of individual goldfish. And if you played the game correctly, you would win one of the fish.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose it's not a nice thing. We don't like these things. It's not very ethical, but without that, I never would have had that opportunity to have that fish. So it's quite a bit of a what do you call it?
Catch-22 there?
Yeah, it's quite a common start for people. The more people that start off like that, then you actually know. And not everybody's willing to admit it, but it's probably the bulk of people that don't get introduced through their parents. It's from...
Yeah. Nope, I think we're having a few issues with John.
Oh, we got a bit of a freeze going on there. But no, actually, the thing that made it really sort of a captivating experience for me, and I think which kind of solidified my long-term interest in fish keeping, was that when I was told to choose my fish as the prize, one of the fish in the bags was a tiny little brown thing. It didn't look like any of the other gold ones. So I chose the little tiny brown one in sort of pity. And later on, it turned out to be the most beautiful, bright yellow fish with beautiful black fins. It was such a transformation. It was amazing for me. And I just thought, wow, the care that you give something can result in such a dramatic change, and I was just hooked after that.
Yeah, makes absolute sense. I think there's obviously a lot of fish that will start in a different sort of colour, form, and change, and a lot of people have expressed to me how much they've enjoyed watching that transformation of what was a very plain and dull fish turning to this absolutely vibrant, beautiful looking thing in their aquarium. So I totally understand and see that viewpoint from there. So yeah. You obviously do a lot of exploration and stuff like that. So your travels have taken you to a lot of different places around the world. Some stand out more than others from your blogs and your writings and your photos and stuff like that. One that stands out a bit more than others is the Western, I might be pronouncing this wrong, the Western Gnats. What led you there?
Oh, Western Ghats. So yeah, I took a trip to. No, that's fine. But I took a trip to southern India a few years ago. I had the pleasure to be asked to speak at the Kerala University of Fisheries and Ocean Studies, I think it's called, or Ocean Sciences. And actually, my talk there with them was about my journey from just sort of being a naturalist to moving into the world of conservation. And I kind of doubled up that experience with a little bit of exploring and traveling. I took some time to travel across a lot of the Western Ghats and went all the way from mountain sides down to mangroves and all sorts. Managed to see some incredible species in their natural habitats. And I must say, I always thought that I loved the Amazon more than anything else. But going to southern India, I absolutely fell in love with that place. It's an incredible, incredible place.
Wow. What sort of species were you managing to see in the wild in their natural ways?
Well, I managed to see quite a lot of different biotopes. For example, there was one quite high mountain area or mountainous area on the border between Kerala and Tamil Nadu, where I was able to find, it was actually just a forest stream, a tiny little tributary of a larger river system there, where I was able to find, I think the common name, you refer to them as melon barbs, Haludaria fasciata. Interesting about those was that the form I found it was quite an aberrant form. It was a solid red male breeding colors, and the typical female color was the more beige with the black stripes. But I mean, the males they had a beautiful sort of green iridescence on the body and the fins. It was just amazing to see. But they coexisted with, I think it was Divario malabaricus, and actually I found a very young Channa striata in there. And that was amazing. That was a beautiful biotope, which I mean, I'll talk a little bit about it, but for anyone who's more interested, they could just jump on my website to check out the blog, and they can see.
I've listed. I put a link to the website earlier on in the chat for everybody that can pop on and see all the biotopes.
Yeah, I must say that particular, I really wrote that one from my heart. Actually, I in terms of my writing, it's one of my favorite articles. But yeah, I was able to see in different places. I was able to actually explore a lot of brackish habitats, which was really interesting. You get a much greater idea of species that can be found in brackish environments, because often we just think of the same 3, 4, 5 species, maybe little pufferfish or something like that. And I was two species of Pseudostromenus, the tiny little anabantoid species, Aplocalus lineatus. It's a beautiful sort of rice fish looking thing. Oryzius setnai, I don't know if you guys know this, it's a tiny miniature little fish. And a very lovely another tiny fish as well called Horadandia atucoraline, which is a tiny little carakin, I guess, but it has unusually it's got a very nice bright green coloration on the side, which is a color you don't see so much of in fish. But yeah, please. yeah, I mean, you guys who are paying attention and listening, please do check out the article for all the pictures and stuff. You'll really get a good look at these fish.
Once we get off this video, I'll jump onto your website and I'll share it onto my Facebook page as well. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that are watching that'll be interested to have a real decent read of that, because it sounds absolutely amazing. Yeah, that sounds phenomenally cool. You mentioned that you, yep.
I was just going to say that one other species that I wanted to mention, just in case it was of interest to anyone, was is it Pseudotropis maculatus? I think they're orange chromide.
Yes.
They're wonderful species. I was able to see them a breeding pair actually with fry, and I captured a video of it, which is also, I don't know if it's in the blog, but it's definitely on my YouTube channel, so people can see the breeding pair with the fry in situ, and it's a nice observation.
Nice, fantastic. They're not particularly common here in New Zealand. Every now and then they pop up, but they're not the most common fish around. The times that I have seen them, I've thought they're quite beautiful looking fish. It'd be very cool to see that video of them with a pair with fry and stuff. That'll be quite cool. Again, definitely be checking that out after this. Saying something, John? No.
Cool. No.
Cool.
I think I've got connection problems tonight.
Okay. You're mentioning that you like the Amazon quite a lot. Is there something specific that you sort of focus on when you go there, or what sort of led your real interests in that region or particular regions of there?
I think I've always been fascinated by pterophyllum angelfish, and also the discus fish. I've kept them both for many years, and for me, the more homework I do on them, the more and more I figure out and fill in little knowledge gaps. And I'm always interested in their distribution and ecological barriers, and why do we find certain species in one place and not in another, and always trying to uncover all of these things and understand more. But it's not until you actually go to these places that you can really understand certain things. Not only things like ecological barriers, but also how species are adapted to their habitats, why they look the way they do, why they behave the way they do. As soon as you see a fish in context, it's like light bulb moment happens, and it's it just gives you a whole different thought process and understanding to it. So I think for me it was just about primarily to try to observe the fishes in their natural habitats, especially Pterophyllum altum, which was one of my passions. So interested in that particular species. But also I had been doing I was somewhere around 5 years research and homework into my fish food product Nature Kind. And it was time for me to get out into the wild and really observe what the fish were consuming in nature, what was taking up the majority of their diet, and really try to understand a little bit more so I could formulate this product in the best possible way. That's a whole...
if I'm right, you opted for a fruit-based fish food, is that right? Berries and things that would naturally fall into the river. Is that the foundation for it?
The fruits are not the foundation of the food, right. But what it is that they are included in there because they are foods that are naturally consumed in places like the Amazon and so on. So it was just a process of trying to get more, and nobody was putting fruit into fish food, let alone fruits that they actually consume in the wild. So it was just a case of trying to make the diet as close to nature as possible, but not only in terms of the ingredients, but also the percentage composition, how much of the food was made from algae, how much was made from plant materials or insect, allophanous insects and so on. So it was trying to match nature as much as possible, but also keep the integrity of the food, prevent like over wastage happening in the tank, or it's really hard to get a good balance of those things for the food to keep its integrity in the water column. I think that's Rebecca, isn't it? Hi, Rebecca. That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
Actually, for those of you who have not become aware of Rebecca's videos, I urge you to go and have a look at her YouTube channel. She has a fantastic video channel.
In the UK, Rebecca's very knowledgeable and is always present when there's interesting conversations everywhere.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to. How long did it take you to really hone into what you were doing with your fish food? Like you mentioned, sort of 5 years, and you did a lot of homework and things like that. So from concept to this to where you are now, what did that process look like, and how long did that kind of go about for?
I think that the total process, I would have to include the very, very earliest attempts at any form of fish food. So I was quite heavily into the whole beef heart scene at the beginning. And so in total, I'd say from the very, very earliest to what we have now as nature kind, I'd say that took me about 6 or so years to get to that point. But yeah, I mean, the beef heart thing was very, very interesting. Trying to find a good food for discus fish was very challenging. I used to make the fish food myself. And then I thought, I need to save some time. So I tried to buy it from elsewhere because there were other people that made these things. In the end, I found out that what I was doing was actually, I think I'd put a bit more time into it than whoever was supplying it, whoever else was supplying it. So I just went back to making it myself. And it's kind of my nature in a way. Once I'm interested in something, I have to do it to the highest possible standard. It bothers me mentally if I'm cutting corners, So yeah, I end up with these really high quality beef heart products that I ended up selling to most of the UK for a number of years, and it was in a number of stores, and a lot of the discus retailers were using it or selling it and stuff. But I just came to the conclusion in the end that it just wasn't, no matter how good it was, and I mean, I was getting from all of the breeders and everybody fantastic growth rates and very, very low death rates from the young fry. But it was just something about it that was just niggling in the back of my mind, like this isn't as natural as it could be, and it wasn't really aligning with what the direction that I was moving in. And so I wanted to, I just wanted to explore something else and see if I could do something even better for the sake of the fish. And I suppose that's how the concept of Nature Kind came about. It was about not only being kind to nature, but also that the people that resonate with this type of product are the nature kind of people. So that was the philosophy behind it.
Well, I remember, it was about 2016, wasn't it, roughly, when Nature kind of hit the market, I'd imagine. And there was a man up where I stay up in Scotland who Alex, you know Alex. He was a rainbow fish breeder. Yeah. It was Alex that actually supplied me with a packet of the food way back in 2016. And I remember the one thing that stood out was the texture. It was a soft, because it looked like frozen food, but when you take it out, it was a soft texture that could be used in so many different ways. And that was one thing that I'd never experienced with fish food. Fish food was always one-dimensional. You either dropped it in, stuck it on the glass, or, there was not a lot, but this was so usable. And obviously the fish loved it as well. And it didn't cloud the water, which was perfect for me.
For those of us that are in New Zealand, I've tried to contact, or I have contacted some of our importers to see if they can basically contact you to see if we can get something moving to get it into New Zealand. But I've hit roadblocks on legislations and certifications and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely something that I've tried to get someone to make contact with. But unfortunately, the way New Zealand works, it's been a few roadblocks in that, because I would absolutely love to have that product down here as well. Some things aren't meant to be, I guess.
It's really hard work, and with all of my conservation obligations and everything else I do, it's been really challenging to try and push Nature Kind to its full potential. It's an interesting project. It's something that I treat nowadays as I don't rush this project. What I actually need is, because it's made in a very unique way, as you have observed, John, that it's quite a unique product in its own right. There isn't an automated machine that you could just buy from China somewhere that would produce this en masse. So it would take quite a lot to establish some sort of mechanical infrastructure to produce it. But that's only my major roadblock, actually. To get to that point, I'd probably be able to supply it to everybody. The demand is much greater than the supply.
Absolutely. But maybe one day, maybe something will change, and maybe you'll have some time. I hope so.
So you mentioned a little bit about when you do your research. I'm assuming that's not a quick Google search and clicking on the first link that comes up. What sort of things do you do for research when you're trying to work out or learn about a particular species or area that you're working on? Are you talking to other people that are knowledgeable? Are you reading lots of books that have been previously written about the subject? Or what is your research pattern or research method when it comes to that sort of thing?
I think for this type of thing, you really do have to have a multifaceted approach to your research. So yes, you should definitely have a large library of all the different books that you know, on all the different species that you're interested in, but not just the common fish keeping or aquarium books. You know, I'm talking about ecology books, ichthyology books, you know, going right into detail on the science of some of these things. At the same time, you know, there are some great resources online which you can find through Google, and that's great. But more specifically, I always advise people, if you're going to use Google, try to use Google Scholar, which is a kind of subdomain of Google, which helps you to search only academic research. And so on there, if you want to look up a certain, say for example, the distribution of a particular fish species, you could type in the scientific name of the species. Maybe it's Haludaria fasciata, as we spoke of earlier, and then distribution. Inside there, any scientific papers with those terms will come up, and you'll be able to look at perhaps even the people that describe the species and where they found it, the habitat, the conspecifics, and all of these other different things that will give you a much better indication, first-hand information a lot of the time. So I tend to use that a lot, but I do draw on experts. There are people who are more who have much greater expertise in a species or a place or a habitat, whatever it might be, that I can turn to and say, I know this is probably your area. Could you tell me more about X, Y, or Z? And you'll be so surprised at how pleased people are that you are interested in their area of expertise, and they're so keen to share information with you.
Yeah, I've definitely found that doing these interviews every couple of weeks and approaching people and asking, hey, you're clearly interested in this, you know a lot of stuff about this, do you want to share it with the people that want to hear it? And 9 times out of 10, yeah, cool, let's make this work. So I totally agree with you on that case. Is Nature Kind available in the US anywhere, or is it still in the UK?
At the moment, well, prior to the whole Brexit thing, we had a little bit of expansion into Europe. And currently now just scaled back and just really available at 1 or 2 stores in the UK. So until I overcome my hurdles, that may be a bit of an issue. But I mean, I get requests from the US at least once or twice a month for the last 5 years. Wow. As soon as I can, I'm going to try and get this product available to everybody. But yeah, just need a little bit more expertise first.
So you're obviously involved in the Freshwater Life Project organization. Do you want to tell everybody what that's about and what your involvement is in that organization?
Yeah, okay. I'll try to keep it concise because it can get quite drawn out and long if I explain the whole thing. But I am the founder and the current chairman of the Freshwater Life Project. It's a UK-based but a global conservation charity registered with the Charities Commission. Originally, prior to the sort of creation of the organization, I had been doing some sort of citizen science work, collaborating with some scientists over in Cyprus, working with a native killifish species there. And I had found, to cut a long story short, I found that it was incredibly impacted by human development and various other anthropogenic threats, of which not much was being done about it. And after some time, there were 2 known populations at the time, and one night I was scrolling through the Google Earth maps and just looking at different places on the island, and I suspected there was one place where we may find some more. And fast forward to a trip later on that year, and I actually succeeded in finding a 3rd population on the island. So we wrote a paper about it, like a geographic range extension of the species. And what I come to realize is that in order to even begin talking about protections and getting funds together to try and make a difference for these fish, if we were not some type of credible organization, we would have no chance. It'd be very, very difficult. So I decided with a few friends who are also involved in fishes and conservation and such to start the charity. And we've just persisted and just gathered momentum until this point where we are today, where we've got a number of projects, doing various different things here and abroad, and just trying to grow as we go.
Cool. So one of the projects that I came across on one of maybe your website or the Freshwater Life Project website was the Inner City Pond project. What gave you the idea to kind of go about that, and how is that working?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It is for anybody who lives in urban environments. You'll understand that nature is something you appreciate because it's rare. You know,
exactly.
I live in more or less central London. So natural places are usually parks, or you get some woods here and there, small forest areas, but you have to travel. Yeah, exactly. And I live in Islington, which is the borough, I believe, in London that has the least green space per citizen of any.
Wow.
So I I had come across one small green space, and they had a kind of laminated piece of paper saying that they had a project planned there for some kind of like wildflower areas and some other things. And I made contact with them and got in contact with the council through them, and suggested a pond. Fast forward a few years and a pandemic and all these things, we've only come to complete that one just a few months ago.
Yeah.
And the project is amazing. We're engaging local communities, getting them involved with their local park groups to do activities and learning about nature, freshwater biodiversity, and just helping people with their mental health, helping lesser represented groups to get involved in conservation. Like it's been an amazing project, really, really fun and enjoyable and rewarding.
Sounds amazing. So have you just got one rolling at the moment, or is there a few coming through?
Well, in the last year, the project manager who runs that project is called Laura Suckley, and she's come from a background of communications and community engagement, as well as conservation, and so she was able to really take this project to the next level. Oh, see, I don't know where John's gone, but I'm sure he'll be back.
Yeah, I think he's having a few connections tonight, so we'll see. There he is again.
No problem.
Cool.
Sorry about this, guys. I've got one of the worst connections I've ever had, I think. So don't mind me.
Sorry, but yeah. So the project began to fly. So we've had another in 2021 and 22. We've maybe another 5 or 6 that popped up, and so we're moving around into different boroughs and working with different local authorities, and it's been really, really great.
Cool, excellent. Excuse me. Recently, you've started fire away, John.
Yeah, I was just popped into my head. Have you ever thought about working for the inner city ponds, working through the school systems? I remember when I primary school adopted this small wooded area, and we developed we reclaimed a wild pond, and that was something that it's an experience that I've brought with me my whole life. Really, it was wonderful, and I think when I seen it instantly reminded me when I seen the Inner City Pond project on your website, and it took me right back. And I thought, is it something that you've considered or been rejected for, or is it too difficult to get involved in the school system, or what?
Yeah. No, it's definitely something that we're passionate about, interested in, and especially from the educational perspective, we want to engage younger people. We're currently working on one pond project that's connected to a university in London, but in terms of younger people, people. The only reason we haven't done it is because the project is only really starting to make traction now in the last year. And so, with limited resources and time, we just haven't got around to doing it. But it's inevitable as part of this project. Good idea.
Absolutely.
You've recently started a vlog series on your YouTube channel regarding biotoping and stuff like that. That's something that I'm personally really interested in, and I'm enjoying watching your series come along. What made you decide to jump on that particular format to get out what you wanted to get out, and what is it about biotopes and recreation that really does it for you, that put some interest in there for you?
That's a really good question, actually. I think I'm still asking myself that question to a degree. I'm not fully convinced as to why I've migrated onto the video platform, but I think it's, as the biotope hobby is growing, I've noticed it's grown quite a lot in the last 4 or 5 years, especially around the world. I'm conscious of the direction of the hobby. I would like, from my perspective, to see the hobby to be much more focused towards the ethical side of fish keeping, very fish focused on well-being and enrichment of the fish species, rather than the traditional decor-based aquascaping approach. And that's not in any form, a dig or a derogatory comment towards the aquascape community, but biotoping is very much more so about the collective ecosystem of a place, rather than just the abiotic elements or the biotope. And so that was one of the subjects that I'm sure you guys would have seen. I touched on in, I think, my first video, where I was saying, let's not forget about the biokinosis. And many people have not even heard of the word. For anybody who's unaware and hasn't seen the video, an ecosystem comprises a biotope and the biokinosis, and the biotope are the sort of non-living elements, and the biokinosis are the living, interacting community of organisms that live in that place together. And I just want to try to remind people that these two things go hand in hand, and so we should be looking at biotopes from an ecosystem perspective. And so, as much as I would like to rebrand them as ecosystem aquariums, I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen anytime soon. But the mentality could be there. We can approach it with that mentality, and I think that's why I've tried to put a voice on another platform to reach a wider audience on that.
I find it quite interesting that one of the judging criteria for aquascaping is an environment, like a natural environment, where the fish would sort of be feeling natural or normal, or whatever the terminology is. And you look at some of these incredibly pruned and manscaped aquariums, and as beautiful as they are, you do question, this is probably not actually what that's ever going to look like for the fish that they've got in there. Whereas going the other way, it's more of that natural environment, and to me that is more visually appealing. Again, no disrespect to aquascapers, because they make some phenomenal aquariums, but the other side of it is that full system of, this is an ecosystem running with each other, everything's in balance together. That's the real ticker for me, I think.
An aquascape is fully focused on the plants and the hardscape, or in Chris's term, the biotope, not the biokinosis. And like you said, some of them are fantastic. And when you break down aquascape and it comes into all the different genres, you get the natural, the nature, the jungle, all the different kinds. But then when you flip it onto the actual, what we're just talking about, the biotope focused ecosystem, you can even apply that to saltwater reef tanks, because in my hobby, that was the first time I really entered into the ecosystem frame of mind, because you've got live rock, you've got live sand, and it all works up to the surface, because you need that. Every single part of that aquarium has to work. And I think that I then took that mentality over to freshwater aquariums, and that's when I seen what Chris was talking about, that's what really struck out, because that makes perfect sense. So yeah, I totally agree.
No, it's totally. I think it's important to remember as well that the aquascaping as a hobby is multi-dimensional. It's not just about the hardscape, or one. There isn't just one way to do aquascaping, and so there are going to be people that are more interested in maybe hardscapes, or more interested in one particular style, because some people like to do I forget all the Japanese terminologies, but I'm not even going to pretend. No, that was the one. Iwagumi. I was going to say it, but I didn't want to get it wrong out of respect. But yeah, all of these different styles, and so some of that, when people are experimenting with biotoping, some of that is going to leak into their work, and so that's fine. That's fine. Everyone's just trying to do their best at the end of the day. But I think that's what comes with competitions, isn't it? Like you normally see them in the biotope competitions, and everyone's trying so hard to fulfill these criteria. And you often get only a handful of people that really get it right, and I think those people need to be rewarded for that. But in order to do that, you need to have judges that can really see what they're looking at, if that makes sense. So you need people that really have these
judges like that. People like yourself or Ivan McColgie that have actually been in these areas and seen what a natural environment is like. It's very, a lot of them are very silty and not nice to look at from an aesthetic point of view. But people, it's almost ingrained in us to avoid that type of environment in your aquarium, because you're meant to keep it clean. You're meant to, filter through the gravel. You're meant to do all these things. That's what you're taught when you first get into the hobby. But it's breaking away from that and allowing the aquarium to get dirty and to get a build up of biofilm and that sort of thing. And sometimes it's hard to let go of what you've grown up with and explore that, the dirty tank aquarium, and that's part of the fun though. And more people need to let their aquariums go a little bit and just watch what happens.
Yeah, the management of biotope aquariums is something that has to be done meticulously. You have to take great care when it's very delicate. You don't want to disturb this this living layer of substrate that you've created, or often all of these biofilms and periphyton growth, or whatever you're trying to achieve in your tank. But at the same time, you do need to do a level of maintenance. I know many people say, I don't clean the aquarium at all. But, sometimes it is necessary. It really depends on your balance. Maybe you have slightly more fish than your tank would permit in a perfect world. Maybe the setup of your plants is not such that it can control the rate of waste is greater than the rate of removal of the waste. It's hard to get a good balance, and so these things take time, often years, to achieve. And so when people say, okay, we're going to do a competition and I'm going to create a biotope aquarium in a day or two, it's never going to quite be the authentic article, but the best replication that people can make at that time. It's not easy. It's not easy.
No. Thank you for joining us, Helen. She's just talking about how she's got a mixture of sort of aquascapes and biotypes within her home aquariums, and the best for her is just making sure the fish's welfare is in mind, which I think is also really prominent. And the same that we as hobbyists should never forget that the number one is making sure that the fish are healthy, not stressed, doing what the fish need to be doing, basically.
Yeah, and I think for me, my reasoning behind this is, or at least behind trying to get this message out about reminding ourselves of the ethical aspect of fish keeping, is quite. It's directly tied in with my love of the aquarium hobby, because as time is passing, we are moving ever so close. More close to a time where the aquarium hobby could be banned. Society is changing. There are lots of different beliefs on captivity, and if we do not demonstrate that the aquarium hobby is more than just collectors having fun collecting different fishes, we may well lose the hobby altogether, or at least it will not be what it once was. And that will probably begin with banning certain fish species, and then banning more, and only allowing captive bred fishes. And that's great. There is a place for captive bred fishes, especially when we start to talk about endangered species and that sort of thing. But then we also have to remember that stopping the ornamental fish hobby would actually be devastating for many, many people who use it as their lifetime. So we have to think about those communities of people, how the ornamental fish hobby, what role that plays in their lives, and maybe even look at how we could support those people to be more sustainable. In many cases, there are already very sustainable systems in place. It's just not very well documented. And in some cases, with certain species, they are naturally sustainable. For example, I saw the habitat of the cardinal tetras in the Orinoco region.
Yeah.
And even though it's a highly collected species, on the whole, it is absolutely impossible to collect all of them, because in the high season, they go right into the flooded forest. You can never catch them. And so there's a massive period of the year where those fish are allowed to thrive away from any possibility of capture, to breed and do all of these things. That being said, we shouldn't blanket term any of these things. There are going to be places where you can overfish species. Yeah. So places need to be, all of these different populations need to be looked at with individual cases.
Yeah.
So we can't say one thing for one species. But, lots. I mean, the conversation goes somewhere else, but it's very interesting.
Yeah,
it's more about sustainability of our hobby.
Yeah.
And
that can, that can come from the fish keeper themselves learning how to fully care and provide the best environment, and all the way back to the people catching fish wild, the local fishermen, educating them and teaching them the best way and the best time to fish for these, and do the exporting process, and working on that right from the very point of them coming out of the water to them going in the aquarium. Everybody's got a role to play in sustaining the hobby.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, 100%. And that's something that we're looking at through Freshwater Life Project. We're really passionate about inclusion and understanding people. People are centric to conservation. It's not about species most of the time. Most of the time, it's about people, management, community, management, or supporting how people utilize their resources, or, these
Makes
things.
sense.
But done in a way that is not the old-fashioned kind of colonial conservation, where you're sort of just coming in as the white savior and saying you've got to change how you live and doing all this stuff. It's more about going in there, asking people, what challenges do you face? Can you imagine how you might be helped? Could we help you? Do you want help? Some people
a brilliant example of that in action is the Amazon Research Center in Peru. Iquitos. And we've spoke to Anthony and the work he's done. And it's that comment you just said about being the white savior coming in, into the jungle, and you'll do it this way, and we'll save you. I actually referenced that to Anthony, and what he did. He actually had a really good relationship with the head of the fishing industry at that point, and they formed a really good partnership. And through working through him, he was able to connect with the local people and build up trust. And the approach they're making is taking some fish out and showing them the beauty of these fish, and showing them that it's not just a river, it's not just a resource for food. There's a lot more in there, and teaching them to love and respect the life in that river. And that seems to be working well for them.
100%. Yeah, that definitely. And each species will have different requirements and different ways of being managed sustainably. In some cases, like with discus fish, for example, I have actually, John, you probably know of Hudson Crisanto from Brazil, H&K discus. Maybe you know of him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he was probably the first person, actually, maybe still the only one, to start working with sustainable discus harvesting from the Amazon. And one of the interesting things that he did was he started to pay his fishermen based not on the quantity of the fish they provided, but on the quality of the specimens. Wow. So he trained them on how to identify high quality discus fish. And so, for example, if they catch 2,000 discus in a net, they may well only take a few hundred, and the rest go back to the river, or the rest go back, or some of them will go back into pens in situ in the river, where they can, take care of it, bring them into condition and such. So there's an element of sustainability to this whole thing, and having fishermen paid quality over quantity works very well for discus fish, because there's kind of a difference between one individual to another. Whereas for the cardinal tetra or something like that, it's never going to work. Very interesting. It just goes to show that each different species could be treated differently, and we should be looking at all of these things as individual cases.
Just before you touched on something about endangered species, and yesterday I shared to our Facebook page an article off your website regarding the zebra loaches and them being endangered. And someone asked me to ask you, you may or may not know the answer to this, but are they still being harvested from the wild, or are they commercially reproduced now into the hobby? I'm not sure if you know the answer or not, but I was asked to ask.
Yeah, I mean, Botia striata is an endangered species, and to my knowledge, they are collected from the wild. I'm aware. I think their range is kind of restricted to the Krishna River, which there are many tributaries of that. The Krishna River drainage, should I say? And there are some rivers there where it exists. One particular place, I think, is a place called Koina or something like that. And at that place, there's a market along that river where those fish, among others, are sold as food, actually.
Right.
But that's the only place that I'm aware of that species where it's sold as food. There may well be the others, most likely, but that's the only one I know of. Other than that, I think it's mostly just extracted for the ornamental fish trade.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, very, very beautiful species. I mean, there may well be a degree of sustainability to how it's harvested because it's still around in some degree. But all we can really go by is the assessment information, which states that it's is the extraction for the ornamental fish hobby and its endangered status. So yeah, very nice species. Yeah, I'd like to know more myself personally. But yeah, hopefully that addresses the question. Yeah, I believe it's taken from the wild.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you. So
Actually,
we're getting pretty close to school. Yep, far away.
I was just going to say, if the person who gave you guys the question is interested in their biotope, I think you can get some information on Koina River. I think it's Koyna, and some of the other rivers. But yeah, generally their habitat is like bedrock, cobble, sand, some leaf litter, and overhanging vegetation, and like to represent forest cover. Anyway, they can get in contact with me. I can give them more information if necessary.
Cool. When we finish with this, I'll make sure I share your obviously your YouTube channel, your website, that kind of stuff. So I'm sure that this hour or so has brought up a lot of questions with a lot of different people, and it's been very informative for me. And there's been a lot of questions coming through. So I think there's been a bit of a thing sort of sparked in a few people, which has been fantastic. So we'll be sure to share all the contact and information, all that kind of stuff that we can for you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. I think we could probably sit here for another hour if we had the available time quite easily. But we are coming close to the end of. I like to try to end our sort of interviews and our presentations with a set of very quick 6 questions. None of them should stump you too much. They're very, very low key. So my first question is, if you're flipping a coin, are you heads or tails?
Wow, my mind just was 50-50. Let's say heads.
Heads. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Sorry, once more. You cut off there.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, wow, very interesting question. Time travel.
Yeah, cool. That's a nice one.
I know. Nobody said that before.
Do you prefer to drink? Yeah. Do you prefer to drink tea or coffee?
A variety of natural teas.
Okay, cool. What's your favorite place to visit?
Other than home, I think it's got to be just jungle/forest.
Cool. Yep. If you could change one thing in the world, what would it be?
Wow. Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah, probably a little bit deeper than the rest of them, but
well, no, but it's a really nice question. I think I would probably just sprinkle a little bit more empathy into everybody.
nice.
That's
I
probably
like that. I like that a lot. And the last question I've got is, what is your unicorn fish? And this could be either inside an aquarium that you're keeping yourself, seeing it in the wild, or whatever it might be. What's one unicorn fish for you?
You know, I've actually had the pleasure to find my original unicorn fish, which was the Terraphyllum ultum from Atabapo. So I was absolutely in love with that fish. I still am.
Cool.
But wow, what would I like to see? I haven't been to the Jingu River, and I would like to see the discus fish there if they still remain. So I think that's one for me that I'd like to go and see.
Cool, fantastic. Well, that's the end of my questions, and that's all that we've got prepared for you. That's not actually true. We've got about another half a dozen questions that we've literally just run out of time for. So it's a little bit unfortunate that we've been pushed with time. Like I said, I'm sure we could have done another hour quite easily of this. It's been incredibly informative. So thank you so very much for your time. It's really appreciated.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. But,
I know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I've got a courier knocking on my door, and they have been frantically knocking for about 5 minutes now, so I probably have to go. But thank you very much. So thank you everybody for joining us. I really appreciate it. Have a good one, guys. Happy fish keeping, and catch you later.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.